Everyone, and welcome to this episode of Endeavour News. I am your host, Hector, with my co-host, Gilbert.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And I'm here with special guest, Uber Soy.
Hello.
How you doing, sir? I really like the name Uber Soy. It reminds me of like
Yeah.
soy burgers or
Thank you.
something.
Well, yeah, it's an ironic name.
Yeah.
It has multiple meanings. I don't particularly share preferred interpretation.
Oh, what are some of those main interpretations?
Well, Uber Soy, one interpretation means extra soy, the other one above soy. And whatever time of day I'm living in, I can be either of those things.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll take that as some of the main meanings, everybody, of what Uber Soy is.
Yeah,
That's
well,
great.
yeah. Well, other than Uber Soy
Yeah.
having a great name, I really like that. I don't know what you call it, like
Thanks.
Twitter handle, YouTube handle. He's also a right-wing content creator. He does commentaries on things like political theory, debunking. I guess you'd call them like left-wing. What are they called? Like bread tubers and stuff like that. Covers some.
Yeah, I used to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, BreadTube's not really relevant anymore, but about 2 or 3 years ago, it was getting
Yes,
pushed
yes,
really
it's
hard
not.
by the
Yeah,
algorithm. So it was good to
yeah,
like
yeah.
debunk these weirdos.
And 3 years ago, I was exclusively debunking that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, the time of the BreadTuber sort of came and went because it was in this funny time in
Mm-hmm.
YouTube where they were trying to de-radicalize everyone during COVID.
Yeah,
So no matter what you watched on YouTube, you always get like recommended Vouch or something, or like Destiny. And I'm just
yeah,
like, no, I'm not
yeah.
watching these
Huh.
losers. But yeah.
And
Yeah.
these aren't even the worst ones, if we're honest.
Oh
They're
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I don't know how you can get worse than Vouch, but well, I guess you can actually.
well, I mean, you have Destiny, so
True.
I would say Destiny.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, this is his
Well,
YouTube channel right here. Great channel. Lots of great content on there covering political theory. I guess the main one that you're known for is right-wing progressivism. We'll
Mm-hmm.
get into that. Gilbert, I think Gilbert, you wanted to ask the questions, right? So I'll give it to
oh,
you.
okay, sure. No worries. Just feel free to chime in whenever. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and motivation, Uber Soy? Tell us a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
who you are, what you do, what drives you, and maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into this space and ultimately what you hope to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I started doing YouTube professionally in the summer of love, which is 2020.
Yeah.
After George Floyd event, I was in university at the time. I was studying political science.
Hmm.
It's not. I was basically in Canadian equivalent of Ivy Leagues, and so as you would imagine there was such a freak out over BLM
Hmm.
where I was,
Yeah.
and all of those things. They really have shaken me to a core. I would
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
And before that, like years before that, you could probably describe me as a liberal conservative. I mean, I do retain liberalism, obviously, still, but basically after the summer of love, I was like, yeah, liberal conservatism is just not going to make it. Like there's no way this thing can continue. And then I started, working on multiple scripts. And I eventually released the video in August of 2020, debunking every like there was a video debunking every anti-socialist argument ever, and I
Hmm.
was responding to it. I think it's now my first or second viewed video on my channel. It has over 100,000 subscribers. Oh, sorry, views. Yeah, it's the
Valid.
first one. Next one is what is it, Chud?
Very important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I know. And yeah, I basically started pushing on the hardcore leftist um leftism. And as I was doing that, I was also actively researching stuff. I mean, I was familiar with race realism before, obviously, with neo-reactionary thinking, a lot of these concepts, but I didn't like delve into them as much. And after my first video got semi-successful, I was like, maybe I should like pay more attention to YouTube. And then sort of started posting regularly, and I was mostly responding to leftists. And if you watch my older videos, you could sense that I'm like more angry than I usually am, as opposed to my newer videos. And that is because I was like, super pissed at what's
Well,
happening.
I
And
think we all were about 4 years ago
Yeah,
in the middle of the COVID nonsense and all sorts of stuff like BLM and not, yeah, like
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
definitely was.
yeah. And so then I uh started branching out to like Twitter, Telegram, Substack, and now I have basically evolved into like a right-wing theorist,
Mhm.
even though I was like originally basically like a, you could say, a reactionary like content creator, because I was primarily reacting to the left. Well, now I'm offering something positive instead.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the origin story.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and Hector and I definitely recommend his Substack. It's very interesting. There's got some really good stuff
Thanks.
there. I've read a lot of it. I definitely recommend that you guys check it out. So yeah, I guess you're just your own kind of force and sort of right wing thought, and you're trying to, in your own way, shift the Overton window. I suppose would that
Hmm.
be okay? Right, right.
Yes, yes, that is correct.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, that's really cool, man. Um, so one of the things talking about your Substack um, and your work, one of the things I found really interesting is your article on biorealism, and you
Hmm.
discussed, biorealism versus ideology. So you've written a lot about biorealism and how modern society prioritizes ideology over biological realities. So
Yeah.
your article is really good, but I just wonder, how do we begin to untangle ourselves from these deeply embedded leftist narratives that are just everywhere?
uh
Um,
I guess
Yeah.
like I guess a good starting
Mhm.
point would be what is biorealism, because some people
That
might not
would be
know.
a good,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Can you set that would be
Yeah,
a good starting point? Mm,
sure. So biorealism is basically, well, there is this concept of race realism. Basically, it advocates that uh, outcomes between various races that we see in society are, are as a result of heredity. And I'm basically expanding this understanding, but also applying it to, like, sex differences, every sort of difference between groups or within groups. I'm explaining. I think that it uh, lies because of different selective dynamics that these people have undergone through evolutionary and all of the permutations. So biorealism is basically a generalized concept. It's race realism expanded to everything else.
mm.
There's this term HBD, but um, I don't know. Like it just sounds a little gay, so I'm using biorealism
What's
instead. I don't
HBD?
like the
Sorry.
term HBD. HBD means human biodiversity, and
Ah, yeah,
like,
yeah. That does
yeah,
sound
I
gay.
mean, it just doesn't. Yeah. So I like to use biorealism. Yeah, which is, I think it covers it fairly well. It has a legacy, it ties to race realism, and it goes beyond that. Uh, yeah, so that would be the definition.
I think it's like a really good term, biorealism. It really gets the point across very well, and yeah, it's a reality rather than just race realism, which the left would
Limiting,
automatically,
limiting,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah, and you expand that into a lot of different things rather than just the limited definition of race realism. So that's really fantastic. So Um, so yeah, so in your view, Uber Soy, how would we begin to untangle ourselves from these deeply embedded leftist narratives? Because it seems it's clear with this current civilization prioritizes ideology over biological realities.
Yes. Well, I think it's relatively easy.
Oh,
For example,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is. Look, so there've been a few surveys about beliefs in hereditarianism, and they've been done intergenerationally. So, for example, how many like boomers believe in like biorealist concepts? How many Gen Xers? How many millennials? And how many Zoomers? And so there is a decline. Boomers don't believe it. Gen Xers believe it even less. Millennials believe it even less, a
Oh.
couple percent. Then there's a sudden spike with Zoomers. They
Hmm.
tripled in size in comparison to millennials. And so I'm thinking, well, how did this happen? What makes Zoomers like so pro hereditary? And I think the obvious explanation is the one that is basically is in front of us. They got red pilled by watching different YouTubers, by browsing Twitter, reading Substack. They acquired knowledge that prior generations do not bother to research, and
Hmm.
Zoomers are terminally online. They're exposed to a lot of information, and they are also exposed to by realist thinking. And so the only way is this argument by uh, Nathan Kaufness, as he advocated, the hereditary revolution. You've got to red pill people, but he is only right halfway. He doesn't understand the other fundamental truth. And the fundamental truth is that there are people that no matter how settled the science is, no matter how many supporting evidence our side has, they'll just not accept it, no matter what.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so and so to deal with these people, we have to change our moral system.
Mhm.
We have to change how we view differences between people, how we view human worth, value, etc. And part of the reasons that are going to make this transformation easy is because human values are changing already. There's as a result of, for example, things that will be free in the future, like embryo selection, all of these so-called manosphere gurus, etc.
Hmm.
They're making people more right-wing. And for example, if you've got technology such as embryo selection, then you can design your own babies. They can be like relatively superior than other babies which are not genetically modified. And so the market is driving is getting there naturally,
Hmm.
because it's one of the fundamentals of progress is you want to improve yourself, not just socially, culturally, epistemologically, whatever, but you also want to enhance yourself biologically. And there is a great incentive for it, because the offsprings of people which would not be genetically modified are not going to succeed as well as those who are genetically modified. And so there's a great incentive for it. And no matter what people think, no matter what people say in their on public, that yeah, everybody is equal, everybody can succeed or whatever, they're still going to engage in these behaviors that I would describe as biologically progressive, predisposing to progress. So ultimately we're getting there, but we need to get there faster, and we need to employ better arguments for changing morality. One of the things I'm working on right now, but it will probably like come out next year, is sort of new thesis, like a new morality thesis. And as I'm developing, and I have developed a new political framework, I'm also developing a new form of morality, which is a scientific Darwinian morality, which would then basically support every other like progressive rightist endeavor. So yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. That is fascinating. And I don't want to sound gross, but to Iron Man your argument, if you just look at where all the this sound gross, but like so cover your ears if you're of the faint of heart. But you were talking about embryo selection, but if you look at the I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you look at where like sperm donors, where
Mhm.
the countries that are most in demand, it's like Scandinavia or something, and like
Yeah,
Britain and these
yeah,
kinds of yeah,
yeah,
Estonia, I think, yeah, these kinds of places. So already we're already getting a
yeah.
kind of genetic embryonic selection right then and there.
Yes.
And
And Estonia has a biobank on their citizens, so like yeah, everybody is going to get there. It's a question of how fast.
they have pardon me, a biobank. Did you say?
A biobank, yes, a biological database, a DNA database of their citizens. Obviously, it's voluntary.
Oh,
They're not like CIA or anything. There's over, I think, 100,000 participants in it,
wow.
and the Estonia's population is 1.5 million, I think.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think actually Iceland has something similar because they only have half a million people. So it's actually very important that they understand where they come from,
Hmm.
unless they end up like many Arab states or something where they have these real problems
Yeah,
with
well, they're
genetic.
basically like inbreeding themselves till they're like literally retarded in like places like
Yeah,
Pakistan.
yeah, yeah. And it's a real problem. It's actually a real issue over in those places. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe they'll learn to get a biobank or sort that out somehow. I don't know, but so that's interesting. Could I just ask while we're on this topic, do you view it as necessarily okay? So you're constructing this new kind of way of thinking in order to uh, combat the sort of leftist lies. That's what you mean by a new morality? Because when I hear that, I
Mhm.
automatically think of like Marxist. But then again, it's not so clear.
No, no, no.
Not that I think you are at all, of course, but is that I mean ultimately, actually, I kind of see where you're coming from because ultimately something like that does need to be done, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
we need to sort of recreate society. I guess is what you're saying. There needs to be a new overarching narrative where the leftist Marxist narrative seems to have sort of gone right over the heads of many like Christian people, which is sort of the morality we used to have, which is by far superior, right? I would think most of us would agree. And basically, what you're suggesting would be similar to a reestablishment of, you know, what Christian, Western European societies used to be. So it just requires a rehashing of,
Well,
that. Yeah, go ahead.
not necessarily. The central
Sure.
focal. Well, I mean, there are a few assumptions about my theory of morality. So, for example, there's this Jonathan Haidt's general, sorry, moral foundations theory. So, most people bring it up to like think of how various groups, political groups differ each other in their like how they value loyalty, authority, purity, harm avoidance, equality, etc. Those are the five moral foundations. There is also a deviation of that theory in which there is a sixth component, liberty. Libertarians score particularly high there. But there's one particular aspect about Jonathan Haidt is that these sort of theories they form into a general factor of morality, and so I think that those high in all of those domains would be more moral because they would be able to respond to practically every social concern that there could be. So they would be higher in a general factor of morality. They'll be highly pro-social, so that's one aspect of it. Sorry, what was the question that you posed me?
Oh, sure. It
If
wasn't.
it
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you said if what I'm advocating for is a return to Christianity, the sort of Western Christian model of the late 19th century. Is that right?
I think he's just
Well,
saying it was
oh,
better than Marxism, basically.
well, okay, yeah, sorry, it wasn't. I could rehash that better. So basically, what I was saying is, upon hearing the like phrase, like, "Oh, you want to create a new morality? We'll call it Uber Soyism, where everybody has to, have super soy and everything that they do." But so I think the initial reaction is to go, you know what? But really, what you're saying is it's just in response
Well,
to the
yeah.
okay.
So there are those two thinkers that well, actually three thinkers that I got really inspired um, by, maybe four, but here are the three main ones, and I'll skip Hegel. He's not the fourth one. He's the fifth one. So there are three people. Actually, yeah, there's also Nietzsche, whatever, but he's not like impacting me right now. Although what I'm doing could
Sure,
be
sure, sure.
described
That's
as
fine. Yeah.
Nietzsche. And so there's Herbert Spencer. You could say he was a godfather of libertarian ideology. He was
Mhm.
like a evolutionary progressive thinker of the late 19th century. Then there's Alexander Bogdanov, the guy who created sort of general system theory, and he also, like, he was a massive innovator, pretty much in fiction writing, in blood transfusion, etc. Like, he was a whatever. So, and there's Raymond Cattell, the guy who wrote for like a scientifically minded new moral system. And so these people have all influenced me. Oh yeah, and did I mention, yeah, Alexander Bogdanov was like a anti-Bolshevik Marxist, even though
Oh,
he
what
founded
the?
the Bolshevik party, and he was instrumental in constructing like the new culture for the Soviet Union. So
Wow.
Is he
yeah,
related to the
and
Bogdanov brothers?
no, 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 no. Bogdanov is his surname. Yeah, so basically, I'm sort of thinking of creating a new moral framework, which is, yes, in line with our like innate biological predispositions, but fundamentally works to reinforce a sort of like pro-life conservative, not necessarily pro-life in the sense of anti-abortion, but in a sense of like pro-natalist, conservative, uh, high culture, eugenics, aiming towards the betterment uh, of society. So I think that should be morality, and a way to do that, I think, is primarily through science and through understanding human biology and operating from that, as opposed to constructing something new entirely, which what the Marxists have attempted to do and then failed every single time. So uh,
Right.
yeah, so that would be what I would advocate for.
Oh, that is fascinating. That is very interesting. And whichever way you look at it, yeah, I mean, there needs to be much more of an acknowledgement of the biological realities of the worlds we live in. Because, yeah, this is somehow we lost that along the way. And
Yeah, and
yes.
so
Mhm.
the primary, I think, sort of weight of this morality would be on the power of selection.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to argue that we engage in selection every single time. Whenever
Mhm.
we're doing something, whenever we decide to do something, we're discriminating against everything else that were selected out, against everything else that we chose to not do.
Yeah.
And so basically, your morality is determined by how well you manage to like select the most optimal outcomes for yourself and for the extension of yourself, which is your group.
Mhm. Mhm.
So but yeah, like I've got a lot of different notes about it. They're like 20 pages or so. They're not in front of me right now. I'm just like doing
Mhm.
this from memory. And yeah, these are the things that I've been thinking about.
Mhm.
um Hopefully I'll release it next year, but I mean, I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, awesome. That's a very interesting. So keep in touch with his Substack, everybody. We'll see further iterations of these interesting ideas expanded upon. So that's cool. Yeah, I believe that the Soviets eventually, the Russians and the Chinese, I think even now, attempted or are doing something similar with how they try to put people who show exceptional abilities. They try to put them into certain positions in society to, if they show exceptional intelligence or athletic ability, they'll put them in a basketball team or in intelligence work, like what the Russians did with Colonel Stanislav Lunev. And of course, you got that tall Chinese guy. I forgot his name, but they put him straight into basketball. But that's very interesting. So we've talked about biorealism versus ideology and how to untangle it. I think it would follow that we should talk about the state of the right today. So, Ubersoy, how do you feel about where the right stands today? There are still major missteps. I think we can all agree on that, both optically and organizationally. And like, what do you think about? I guess a good starting point, if you want, is people who espouse the term woke right and other subgroups
Yeah.
muddying the water.
Yeah, what does that
And
even mean? I don't
yeah,
know.
it's so
Yeah.
stupid. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah, yeah. So what do you feel
Well,
should be? Yeah, yeah. What
mhm.
do you think? How do you think the right stands today? And yeah, what do you think, Ubersoy?
I think the right generally stands today better than it stood in 2016.
Yeah.
Unironically, I'm not one of the black pillars.
Mhm.
A
I can
lot
agree
of
with that.
our ideas are going mainstream. They're being implemented into the government, and by our ideas, I'm obviously doing like an expanded definition. So I'm including both, like traditionalists, conservatives, like white nationalists, libertarians. I'm going with the sort of new reactionaries, broader understanding of our ideas.
Mhm.
A lot of the things that we wanted to do for a very long time, like for example, even this dog thing, many people are saying that it's basically bullshit,
Mhm.
but it's
Well, they got rid of
a
US
lot of
aid, so
people
that's
wanted to do it
yeah.
for such a long time,
Mhm.
and I think that they've been able to save billions of dollars.
Mhm.
Obviously it's not like people who are on the cultural right may not be caring about this as much, but as it turns out, a lot of the things that we wasted money on were related to DEI, affirmative action, to like promoting gay,
Mhm.
leftist liberal values abroad.
Mhm.
The USA Aid, for example, organization, its yearly budget is $1 billion. And they were like promoting extreme leftism abroad. Now
Well,
it got shut down. And why did it get shut down? Because of DOC, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like libertarian dream come true. I
Mhm.
don't know. I think it's for me a cause for celebration. Obviously, that there's also uh, a lot of other topics have now been going mainstream, like sort of biorealism stuff, white advocacy, the JQ,
Mhm.
um, other stuff as well. They're now getting getting a lot of traction. Obviously, there's also a lot of noise. There are those R-worded influencers on Twitter who like what's her name, Lupus.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, who don't know what they're talking about, but that always is the case, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so it's getting better.
Mhm.
I'm really white pilled about the prospects. Obviously, Elon Musk is now going back on his free speech
Mhm. Mhm.
on
yeah.
Twitter.
Well, that's always been the case. Free speech was never really free on Twitter.
Mm.
Well, I would say
I mean, it's better, but it's definitely not
that
like obviously they're still
I
banning people.
yeah, in the first half of 2024 and late 2023, I felt like there was a genuine free speech on Twitter.
Yeah.
I There were complete insane, anti-Semitic, racist,
Yeah.
etc. tweets every single day. They've got millions of views,
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands sometimes. None of these people got banned.
yeah.
So I think,
I will push back
like,
though. There was
obviously,
still censorship
Mhm.
because people like
yeah,
Mark
that,
Collette and stuff never got like their Twitter back after Elon took over. So that's just like one of the examples.
uh, yeah. But I think if you were to create a new account, I think Eric Stryker, a bunch of other people, like Jared
Uh-huh.
Taylor, I think he would not have been banned.
Mm.
Um,
Well, it's hard to say
the
now.
only recent thing, only recently, in the last like 1 or 2 months, that Twitter crackdown has really started coming back into force. Started with
Like
some
Groper accounts or something that were.
no, 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 no. That came after.
Ah,
First,
okay.
Okay.
There was this Indian question,
Hmm.
the H1B debate, right? And a lot of um, ex users got, really agitated, got really passionate, and then it pissed off Musk and
Mm.
probably the Indians who are working for X, and they banned a bunch of people. Then there was a Groyper ban wave, and now I think the latest thing, they have banned a bunch of white nationalists from Australia,
Yeah.
probably with cooperation with the Australian government,
Oh, absolutely.
because
That was
yeah,
absolutely in
so
conjunction with the government because I think even the media was saying like the government complained to X and then X took them all down. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's, yeah, 100%. And so there is this back step, but it's like nowhere near when I like 2021 or 2022. It's night and day. But yeah, also Substack, you could pretty much say anything you want there. You're
Mhm.
never going to get banned. Telegram, there are some concerning news, but for now, they're not really going after like rightist people, even those who are extreme. Maximum what they could do is do like a shadow ban, but they've done that before.
they ban
Mm.
people on Telegram once. I think like Apple, like the literal company Apple, complains to them, then they'll take them down, and that's about it. Like, that's the only time they'll take people down is when.
Yes, yes. Yeah, for example, I have an iPhone, and I could browse certain people on Telegram when I'm on PC, and they're not shadow banned at all. But on my iPhone, I open a certain person, and I can't like see any posts
Yeah,
because he's been, because of Apple or other. It's not just Apple, it's my understanding, but yeah.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. I think as a basic heuristic, like you don't, people probably shouldn't go too hard on like the Nazbol Nazi stuff,
Yes.
yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's just kind of it almost feels like they're almost trying to push the back. I mean, I think if you want to be a serious contender and stay on and influence, like just don't go full retard, basically, and just advocate for things that are kind of to some people maybe nostalgic, but
Yes.
yeah, it's I don't think yeah I just really don't think it's necessary to go that route. At the end of the day, we're trying to retain something of our nations that's kind of side of things just not necessary. But then again, you could also argue, well, there are a lot of people who didn't do that, but they did get banned by Musk after his big, freak out over the
Yes.
H1B
Yes.
India thing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it,
Yes.
it, it is important to remember, like, okay, a lot of this is dependent on national governments across the world. Certainly, Australia worked with the X and stuff like that, and as you guys identified, and it is dependent, on a case by case basis. But yeah, if you can, don't go, full retard and just stay
Yeah.
stay on target.
Yeah.
What are we all about? We want to why are we all here? We want to retain and eventually gain our nations back and restore justice for all. So,
Yeah.
Yes,
or
I'm now in the process of writing a Substack article. 12 rules for like radical rightists. Basically, my parody of Saul Alinsky's. Well, it's not a parody, but yeah, I decided to invent something for positive right wing activism,
Hmm,
like a guidebook. And one of the points that I'm arguing is what you have just said. And I call that point specifically uh, match your words with your power levels, or something like that. As I'm paraphrasing.
mhm,
So, like, certain people can say certain stuff. If you're Elon Musk, you can pretty much say everything and you could get away
hmm.
with, like, you could throw out the Nazi salute and then the ADL will defend you. But for example, if I don't know, you're Joel Davis and you want to pull something like this, you don't have enough power levels to sort of
Right,
Well, they
right.
banned
defend
Joel after he
yourself.
started talking to like actual elected officials and having conversations with them. Like, it was interesting that literally the
Yeah.
next day they banned him
Yes.
when he started
Yes.
talking to Australian
Oh.
senators.
Wow.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, he was trying to. Yeah, yeah. That's.
Acquaint himself to
Yeah.
They
the
want to
senators.
make. They want to create a distance between the ruling class and the rule. They don't want to. They want to shut down any attempts for people like Joel to influence Australian politics. Yeah, I mean that is sad. Uh, what I can say, and again, I'm sort of continuing my point, is that for example, if you're advocating for extreme measures like fascism, self censorship,
Mm,
when we come, sort of, oh, the day of the rope, etc., all of these
Yeah. Okay.
sort of extremist
yeah,
slogans, but then you look at yourself and, like, what? You have what? A couple hundred uh, followers on X,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's your seventh burner account. You're
yeah.
basically a nobody.
Mm,
And when they see people like you, organizing on X, people are sort of like it's sort of hypocritical in a universal sense, I would say,
mm,
because the people who are threatening sort of the regime with very giant repercussions are completely powerless, and they're dependent almost entirely on the whims of the regime. And
mm,
so it's
mm.
just not a smart strategy to
Yeah.
be so combative and so anti-liberal.
Yeah,
And
right.
what I am sort of advocating is basically it works like you could say an improvement to democracy. I'm not departing from liberalism in the sense, I'm
Sure.
continuing liberalism, but the liberalism of the like early 20th century, the sort of American progressive movement of the 20th century, was which was completely different from whatever came about after like the 1960s. It's a complete antithesis.
Mhm, mhm,
Antithesis, yes.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and yeah, amazing. Yeah, and that's fair enough. And yeah, it's and that is a much more intelligent, I think, far more effective strategy. Seems to be working out for you very well, and I think along that basic vein is yeah, what how we need to approach these issues. It seems so silly to me that. And it really doesn't look good, But Brandon Martinez is someone who can speak to this. That it's all a bunch of silliness, and if perhaps Joel, perhaps he could have gotten a lot further if he didn't. And
Yeah, I
shots
really
fired, but yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ubersoy.
yeah, I really like Joel Davis of 2022 and like late
Mhm,
2021 when he was saying, "Wait a minute, liberalism of the 20th century that advocated for white ethno state, it
mhm,
was like a Darwinist,
mhm.
and now he's basically this a boogeyman of the left, a person who is hard, whose free speech rights is hard to defend. You can only
Mm,
defend him on, like, I don't know, idealistic basis, because
Yeah.
for most people, people like him, they're just disgusting, just like
Yeah.
Antifa freaks.
Yeah,
Uh,
you hit the nail on the head there, Ubersoy. It is so kind of annoying to me that so many people on the right, they're so reflexive in their thinking that as soon as the left calls them a Nazi, they go, "Oh well, I guess I'm a Nazi now," and
yeah.
they start acting like, "Oh, it's like yeah," and there have been other iterations of that as well. It's like, "Oh, so you people are fat redneck hillbillies,"
Yes,
and
I'm.
go ahead, go ahead.
And Brandon Martinez, I just want to say I've been really impressed with his evolution.
Mm,
Like years ago, I used to like periodically watch what he was doing, and he was basically similar to like
mm.
Wignet neo Nazis.
Yeah, he was.
Like he wasn't that interesting, and now
Mm,
look at him.
mm,
He's publishing Substack. He's
mm,
making very researched like takes.
mm.
He maintains a white nationalist, but he maintains being a white nationalist within
Yeah,
this framework that was created for white people for our benefit,
yes.
and without like necessarily being disgusting to
Yeah,
anybody else. He
yeah.
can go way ahead
Mm.
just because he's keeping sanity. And yeah, I've been really impressed with
Me too.
um
Me too, man. He's come a long
what
way,
he's.
and he's. Oh, sorry.
Mhm.
Go. I'm sorry. Uber sorry.
No, no, yeah. I mean,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
just finished saying, uh, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, so have I. I've been really impressed. He's really developed. He's. I mean, he was always a extremely intelligent guy and an
Hmm.
original thinker, like yourself, in fact. So it's yeah, it's really good to see that some people on the right are actually thinking as right wingers and not just these reflexive thinkers that the left make them out to be. They're boogeymen, as you say. It's so silly, but we finally have someone on the right who's actually thinking, and not just being silly. Yeah, I guess is what
Yes.
I would say. But yeah, that's yeah, and I'm pleased to see you have connected the dots, a lot quicker than oh actually pretty much everyone. But and you didn't really seem to need to go through that phase yourself, for what I can see. So that's
No, no. I didn't even
impressive.
go through a libertarian phase. Yeah.
Right. Did you go you just kind of went to a is it right to say you went straight from liberal conservatism, but you were always based
Well,
okay.
yes,
You're
that's
yeah,
true. I was
always
always
based.
based, but actually, no. So when I came to Canada, I was sympathetic to like some like BLM stuff,
Okay.
because I was a little brainwashed. I thought that America was racist or whatever. But like I even when I thought that, I was still pro-white. But
Ah, right.
yeah, so
Interesting.
no,
Wow.
I think it's biological. Like certain people are biologically more predisposed to, value their own. I think I'm one of them.
Mhm,
But it's
mhm.
yeah, I sort of danced between like a centrist and what's it called? A centrist that exists between the right and the far right. So
Yeah, okay.
now you could
The new
describe me as a
center.
centrist. Yeah.
Ah, yes, there we go. Yeah,
The new
that's it.
center.
The new center. Uber
Yes,
Soy
the
logic, yeah.
the base, the sensible centrism.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's been my political evolution. I actually, well, I started pretty after like 2016, like January 2016. I got really, you could say, red pilled, and because of YouTube. So that's when I became very explicitly ideological, because I mostly like consumed rightist content on YouTube. The
Yeah.
Mhm.
so-called pipeline or whatever. The
So
only
you're
pipeline
radicalized
that
by Sargon and Gamergate, basically. Is that correct?
no, I completely missed Gamergate. I
Oh,
was not consuming English YouTube. I'm Russian. I
yeah,
speak
yeah, yeah,
Russian,
yeah.
so I started consuming English YouTube, like political YouTube. I was consuming English YouTube before that, but political YouTube specifically, I started watching after like late 2015, and then like early 2016, I like started supporting Trump,
Hmm.
and all of those stuff.
Yeah, pretty
And
common sort
so
of common pipeline. Yeah,
common. Not I'm not that exceptional in this regard. And so after like a year or so, I found Jordan Peterson, and then I was like de-radicalized. So there is a sort of meme that Jordan Peterson is so stupid. Like, who can he de-radicalize? Well, he got he de-radicalized me for a few years, and then I was like a sort of a liberal conservative, or like a centrist, like you know I wasn't right wing, like sorry, I wasn't further than center right,
right.
and I was not far right too, and I was basically repressing a lot of my, I think, innate
Mm,
genetic biological feelings I have about the world.
mm,
And so I basically have repressed it. I think the reason Jordan Peterson was able to de-radicalize me was because uh, spoken he was like a man. I actually made an entire video about like my experiences with Jordan Peterson, the old one, which is like over 20 minutes in length.
mm.
um
Okay. What's
See if
it
I can
called?
yeah,
find it.
I think uh
Oh,
the this can you scroll down.
I'm going by oldest, I think. Oh wait, no, this is popular.
No, I
Oldest.
mean that's like way old. Yeah, like
oh, okay.
over 2 years ago, I think 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Somewhere around here, I assume.
yeah.
I think go up.
Oh, go up.
Oh, is that it? No. No.
No, go up. Oh no, it's by oldest. Sorry, go
Oh,
down, go
sorry.
down. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, critiquing Jordan Peterson from the right.
Oh, there
Yeah,
we go.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
okay, cool.
right. Yeah, we could just let that play in
yeah.
the background while you talk.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, save that
Oh,
to watch later.
No, I mean, I don't like.
I
Don't
will.
play it. Just like if you want to watch it, like watch it later.
yeah, I'll put it in the chat,
Uh,
the YouTube chat.
yeah, this is probably a more sort of more advanced sort of breakdown of what I'm going to say right now. And what I'm going to say right now, it's going to a little bit differ from the video, because it's in a retrospect, and I haven't watched this video for like 3 years.
Sure.
So I don't really
I
remember
just
what I
realized we weren't
said there.
subscribed. The Endeavour
Yeah,
news
Yeah.
account wasn't
So
subscribed to you.
yeah. So go ahead.
yeah,
Mm,
so basically, um, he's because I really like Western civilization, and a lot of the, like, I was also at the time interested in Nietzsche. I was interested in Fyodor Dostoevsky. I was not interested in Jung, but I was really drawn to psychology, and also the psychology of religion, the psychology of crowds.
mhm,
And Jordan Peterson has really spoken to me on, you could say, this emotional level. And seeing a person like himself rejecting what I'm advocating for in favor of like liberal individualism, I was like, maybe I should give it a try. And
mhm,
I was giving it a chance for years,
mhm.
until the summer of love, and I was, yeah, no way, this is just not
Yeah, I think this
what
summer.
I'm
Just
going
be
to
an
make.
individual. Well, they're like
Yeah,
rampaging and killing everybody. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
yeah. It
Yeah, no,
was.
I mean, yeah, so
Clean your
there's
room.
this guy, a Canadian YouTuber who has, I think, relocated to Russia. Maybe he came back to Canada now. His name is also Endeavour,
Ah,
and
I
Yeah,
know him.
he
yeah.
We
is,
talked to him.
yeah,
Yes.
yes. So his backstory is relatively similar. At one point, he's saying that it was what are the 2014 riots? What was it over? Michael Brown, I
Yeah,
think,
that was
or
like the first
yeah,
BLM. That was BLM like one
yes,
point.
the first BLM, the
Yeah.
first BLM, and he got red pilled over the first BLM. After that, he said, no, yeah, this can no longer
Oh
It
wow.
seems,
continue.
yeah.
And I think he is a millennial. I'm Z. I was born in January 2000, so it's like a generational difference. I'm
Mm,
basically him, but a little younger in this regard. So our red pilling story was similar, but obviously, like it's not really a red pilling story in a sense that how I acquired like all of this information. It's more of a about my like inner emotional state, what's driving me. And you
mhm,
could say
mhm,
like I always wanted to create some version of right wing progressivism. That's why I went to like to study political science in university. But my right wing progressivism today is a lot different than what it would have been had I like stayed in academia, pursued masters, and
mhm,
etc.
mhm.
Like I would be like way gayer, and you would probably describe me as like a libertarian, like a
Sure,
democratic libertarian or something like
sure,
that.
sure.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's your thoughts are very interesting, and I personally would like to see an article of you perhaps describing your transformation through what you went
I
through.
have
Because
released it actually.
okay,
Yeah, it's on Substack. It's
oh great.
half of it is paid. The first half is not paid. Uh, and yeah, it sort of describes a lot of the phases I went through.
Wonderful. Okay, because that well, that's fantastic. I'll keep my eye out for that one because I believe it's really important on the right that we understand as a part of untangling ourselves from this leftist paradigm. It seems to be everywhere at this point still. I think it's really important that we understand how someone from the left or someone like a James Lindsay type, how they make their way to the authentic right, which is us. You know, they're actual
Yes, yes.
preservers of nationalism and our nations. So I think it's crucial that we understand how to do that. What causes a left-wing person to come over to the right, gay to non-gay? So this is something
Yes,
this is
yes.
something that
Range two based.
yeah, this has to be seriously considered by us, and then we need to make changes um, to actually entice these people, or with our optics. I believe we need to make those changes because it simply just doesn't work posing yourself. Not that I would personally want to do that at all, but it just doesn't work posing as a Nazi or as a Nazbol, or all
Yes.
this kind of silliness that was associated with some long and gone figures who tried to make themselves front and center of the dissident right, which I think they've kind of been swept under the rug now. But I think your brand, that by far, if I can call it a brand, sorry, that may be a bit. Your ideas are much
Mhm.
more. Not only are they better, well, they just work, and
Well, they're based
that's
in
what makes it
reality,
us
right?
preserve it. Yeah.
Like all ideas that work should be based in reality, which is, I guess you could say, the main problem with leftism right now is that it's based in delusion.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
the right needs to do the same thing, not like base their
Right.
ideological basis on like utopian delusion and have it actually based in reality.
Yeah, or in a bogeyman sort of imagination fantasy of what we are as per the left's conception of us, and it's just all very silly. And yeah, I would say yeah, people have got to start thinking this way, and we've got to do that better because then we're just going to continue making the same mistakes. So that's
But what are
yeah,
some mistakes that people on the right make and fall into? I guess we could go into like what's like the main one you think, other than
I would say it's
Um,
that, to be
just
honest.
that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, yeah. No, go ahead, Ubersoy. Yeah.
well, let me actually pull up my upcoming articles because making 12 sort of main flaws,
Hmm.
or like
Oh,
if
sweet.
you read them as main flaws. I'm making 12 like positive arguments of what you should do, so their flaws are uh the reverse. Well, yeah. um
I mean, I've always maintained one of the biggest problems on the right is just like the contrarianism. It's like this
yes,
is
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
It's all
have this
contrarianism. Yeah.
point that I call not a hill to die on. And so this refers to purity spiraling, and this sort of understanding that you like to be based, you have to share all of the sort of popular rightist conceptions about the world. And some of these conceptions are obviously flawed, like, for example, climate change,
yeah.
uh, a lot of like the anti-vax stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could put up there, or the like 2020 election being stolen through voter fraud. I mean, you can talk about the Hunter Biden laptop for as long as you want and make an argument that it's a form of like election interference, and yeah, you would make a fine argument, but there is no evidence that like voting machines have drawn extra results for
Well, I think it's more the
Biden or
mail-in, right? I mean, the voter machine thing was
yeah,
didn't really
well,
go
the
anywhere.
the mail too. Trump went to court multiple times. He sued like the machines, the mail-in ballots. He lost every single case, and I think it's pretty much says it. So what the main problem of wanting to die on every single hill that there is that you're sort of not able to cooperate when it's needed. You're not able to come
Huh.
up and, like, for example, support Elon Musk when it's needed, or even Nick Fuentes when it's needed,
Sure. Sure.
because, like, certain people disagree with you on one thing or another, or even with Cenk Uygur. Like, I would love to
Yeah.
for our side to work with Cenk Uygur, if Cenk Uygur was to like reform some of the stuff he believes in, like if it was in our advantage to work with him on one particular point, and then, like, part ways, or whatever.
Hmm.
So
Right.
it does not, like, purity spiraling does not foster cooperation, and it also sort of signals to people who are more serious that, like, you're essentially being led. You're not thinking for yourself. You're just yeah, you're just going to believe everything that your side believes in, and obviously not everything that your side believes in is true, right?
Hmm.
And so you want to get rid of the things that are false, and you should sort
Yes.
of double down on things that are true and push them forward and make alliances. You have to make alliances.
I think one of the most obvious things is the Ukraine invasion of Ukraine. There,
Hmm.
that is one which would be the most obvious to. Yeah, it's hard making alliances with liberals when they all view us as Nazis, but that's part of the why we need to be more
Yeah,
intelligent about these things.
yeah.
And
Well,
uh,
this should,
mm,
like, I mean, the
yeah,
liberals should yeah, like
but I understand what
obviously.
you're saying. I do know what you're saying, and it's a very good point. There is so many, unnecessary, and actually that's the way that the left has become so successful, is that they over time they led the right into these conclusions which really actually didn't really necessarily benefit them, but they led them there and actually got them to adopt their beliefs. I think since the 1960s, especially, that is very
I mean, it's
true.
been happening before that, but that's when it really
Oh
took
yeah,
off. Like
oh yeah,
the leftist capture of academia, which had been going on for basically the 40 years
Yeah,
since like the
yeah,
because
1910s.
conservatives are too principled, and the left is
yeah.
willing to make alliances when when they're being viewed as principled
Yeah.
alliances by the conservatives. And so we need to do something like this ourselves. And but
Mm.
to do that, we have to be more cooperative and less aggressive towards each other
So
and also
yeah,
the outgroup. Uh,
yeah. If you don't think Stalin and Hitler was awesome, you're a cock. You know.
wait,
Well, I mean,
wait.
maybe not
Do they
as
combine
well.
Stalin and Hitler? I mean, that's
Well, I mean, there are people that
There
do
that's
are
that.
something
people.
rare.
Yeah, there are people who do that or who
Yeah,
go
well,
on that
the
thing.
Nazbols. I mean,
Yeah.
the Nazbols. They're like you. I don't think you should even pay
Well, it's just
attention
like
to
the
them
Yeah,
because
most.
you're
they're
not.
very small.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
they're basically like the most contrarian ideology you can get. It's like, oh, my two
Mm.
favorite political leaders are
yeah,
Stalin and
and I
Hitler. It's
think
like, oh, okay.
yes, and I think emotionally, they are drawn to contrarianism. That's why
Yeah.
they're in the beliefs that they are right now.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
hear Nick Fuentes paying a little bit of homage to that here.
yeah, he does
I
that.
don't know if it,
I don't know
yeah,
why.
it's
He's
this
he's he's not a
it's
serious
too
person. Like, that's the thing.
it's too often to make me go to kind of I like a lot of what he's obviously been a real power train powerhouse in trying to push, even if so in a very rough way, some might say, by getting on a black rapper, and which was very funny, and I enjoyed that very much
Mhm.
onto Infowars. But even as rough as it is, it's I think he's been really great in that way. But all the same, it's like it is kind of yeah, hearing that stuff is, but I don't think it really sticks. I mean, hearing about these old authoritarian dictators is obviously people, well, unless you're Jackson Hinkle, then you've got something on the left,
Yeah, well,
and
yeah,
Haas, yeah, these
Well, it's
kind of
just like
yeah,
left
figures.
wing contrarianism. You got right wing contrarianism, and
yes,
Hinkle's just
yes,
like
yes.
left wing contrarianism.
And yeah, it
Yeah.
really speaks to the influence operations
Well,
that might be taking behind the scenes. Go ahead,
I'm
Ubersoy.
not sure he's a left-wing contrarian. He's more like what they say, a tanky. I think Jackson Hinkle is like you could like how the left used to be in the past.
Mm,
Uh, I don't think he's a contrarian necessarily. Maybe has a little bit with his marketing, how he does his marketing. But Jackson Hinkle, I mean, that's like a traditional definition of a tanky. He's just like true to tanky principles. Whatever
mm,
he does is can be considered as tanky. Uh,
yeah, right.
they're
Yeah,
they're
that kind.
not woke at all, and they like sort of left wing authoritarianism.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm
they
That's
more.
do
their
parrot
ideology.
some. They do parrot some like
His
BLM talking points
oh,
and
it's
stuff.
like here's your
Like,
hot take from
Yeah,
Jason Hinkle. It's like the guy's just
yeah,
he just seems
yeah,
like a
yeah,
contrarian to me.
hmm, he should
yeah. But
be. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's like third worldist alliances.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Yeah.
like people on the right are also making alliances with Palestinians, but it's not because like they're sharing their like radical Islamic views or and it's like uh it's sort of like in their ideological interest to support them, just like it is in the ideological interest for people like tankies like Jackson Hinkle to support tankies like Julius
Mm.
Malema, even though he's racist against white people. But I think if there was like a white nationalist communist somewhere, I think Jackson Hinkle would be the first one to jump on the ship.
Mm,
Yeah, like
mm, mm,
he's
mm.
I think he's like a committed authoritarian Marxist, I would say.
Mm,
He's
mm.
just like yeah, and he is also a conservative. I mean, I would not regard him as my ally or anything. I don't think I would necessarily work with him on something.
No.
But like yeah, I don't think he's like a leftist contrarian. I
Yeah.
think there's some depth to him.
He seems to be a Kremlin state operative, as
Yeah,
far
that's
as I
probably a
can
better way to
Yeah,
put
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And he's
He's.
just yeah.
I
And
heard
mhm.
Nick Fuentes mentioned that he's got some deals with Lavrov.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, he probably is on the payroll. He was recently in the occupied Donbass he was filming videos with the Russian
How were these
military.
people allowed
Yeah,
back
I
in?
mean,
Yeah, sorry.
well, yeah, it's like the paradox of intolerance. It's what you've got with liberals. I don't have an opinion on them. By the way,
Mhm.
and whether to shut them down or not. Like
Well, he should have been
I'm not.
conscripted as soon as he went to the Donbass. It's like, you're on the front line, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah, that
hilarious.
would be funny. Yeah, but yeah, so
It's part of the Foreign Legion or whatever
this is
the
where
Yeah.
I'm at.
Russian version
I'm
is.
certain that they're on some form of a payroll.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely. I mean, you've had all sorts of the figures. You've had, I mean, Coach Red Pill's like the
Mhm.
famous one. He died in
Yes,
like
Uh,
prison.
yes,
But then you've
yes,
had like Tim
Tim Pool.
Pool, yeah, Tim Pool
Benny
yes,
as
yeah,
Johnson, for goodness sakes. Benny Johnson, a mainline conservative gay man.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, he's like slop for like, uh, I guess, basic bitch conservatives, and the liberals who are veering towards the conservative end
yeah.
of things. So, yeah, so I think a key takeaway from this is, by the way, the Jordan B. Peterson stuff is, I just want to quickly mention that
mhm,
there's a lot of interesting stuff around that guy. He's had a lot of positive stuff on people's lives, obviously, telling them to clean up their room. But you know, he's not what people who he makes himself out to be, and that's maybe a topic for another time. But I think an interest before we move on to the next thing,
mhm,
I think a key takeaway from this that you've been so great at describing, Ubersoy, is that everyone kind like on the right, maybe not everyone on the right, but on the sort of dissident right, the nationalist right, acknowledges biorealism, but we need to
yes,
realize that we're mind first, and the mind is actually in a strange way different to reality, and we need to be able to contend with the mind in order to get people to understand kind of what we're talking about. And it's actually amazing that you mentioned how Zoomers were actually more red pilled and informed on this than Boomers and,
Yeah.
and their successive offspring, because you would think that interacting with the real world would be far more red pilling than unless you're in your own sort of
no,
95% white enclave somewhere, I guess. But you
mhm,
would think that would be an experience enough, but it's actually going online which has caused people to be red pill. It's kind of seems a bit counterintuitive,
yes,
but that's what's happened. So
yes,
it's amazing.
yes.
Did you want any last comments on that, or
Uh,
before we move on to
can
that,
I
or
add
do
a
you want to
comment
pick
to
one?
that? Yeah,
Yes.
I mean the youth being sort of more right wing and radical like isn't real. Like it's a trend all over the West at the moment. Like in countries like France, Poland, Germany, Austria, Italy, all this. Like the right wing or like the far
Israel.
right, yeah, Israel, like the far right is most popular with like people under 35. Like they get like 35 to 40% of the vote
Uh,
in places like
it
Austria and
it
Germany.
wasn't it wasn't true in 2020, and I actually made a video about it.
Hmm.
But now it is sort of true. But uh,
Oh, it just depends on the
there are a
country.
lot of different there are a lot of different clusters of right wingers, and
Yes.
that's what I noticed. Because there's and I also made a video of actions of the distant right video. I go over about it in that particular video. And so a lot of those rightists today, they're basically what's known as the like they come from the so-called manosphere.
Uh,
And yeah, I would say that this is a very dominant youthful sort of rightist camp. There is also those like intellectual autists slash I don't know, like programming students who
mm,
are into biorealism,
sure.
but they're they're a small percentage. Now, the other people, for the most part, do accept biorealism as well, yet their knowledge about it is, not particularly impressive, but I'm not entirely sure if it's a good or a bad thing yet. yeah, so that's the.
Yeah, I mean it's true in Germany, it's true in Poland. I think it's true in
Mhm.
France and like Netherlands and
I
Austria.
don't think it is true in Poland, actually.
Really, I
Oh,
thought what is it? The
Yeah,
Corin
it's
Party
not true.
was the most popular amongst youth, but maybe I'm wrong there.
No, 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 no. They're absolutely not. I mean, there is a far right
oh,
party in Poland, so-called far right party. Anyways, it's of course more popular with Zoomers than any other demographic group, but they're not polling particularly
Oh, okay,
well.
yeah, I got you.
Poland, Russia, Hungary, and like a lot of those Eastern European countries, the youth there is more to the left because they're reacting to like their rightist government,
Hmm.
and
No,
so it's not as impressive. But everywhere, almost everywhere in the West, we see the opposite
yeah, I think in
tendency.
Romania the right's more popular with youth, but that's because like the Social
Oh
Democrats have
yes,
been in power for
oh
like
yes,
ages, and the boomers love them
yes.
there.
Yes, 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 Romania, Romania. So they also have a large rightist Zoomer. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just reactionary stuff. They're reacting to whoever was in power, but also some of it is genuinely being red pilled.
hmm.
Uh, 10 years ago, sorry, 15 years ago, there was nothing like Andrew Tate, and Andrew Tate
Oh.
he sort
Yeah.
of shook the entire industry like what I can think of any parallel, but he really has shaken up how the politics is formed by the youth. And
Mhm.
so many, for example, I don't know, even groypers,
Yeah.
many writers today who are like 16, 18 years old, they got red pilled because of Andrew Tate. I mean,
Oh
yeah.
no. Fuck. Okay, yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't like Andrew Tate myself, but there's that. He's probably, you know, there are two sort of very loud youth rightists on the space.
Mm.
One is Andrew Tate, the other is Nick Fuentes. They're mostly consumed by Zoomers almost exclusively. So
Very true. Yeah. So that
the
they're kind of the
Zoomers
white.
are.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and also, for example, the Zoomers, they're more authoritarian than any other generation, so they're more in support of like, uh, the military taking charge of the country. They're not particularly pro-democracy, which I don't particularly like.
Hmm.
But again, it's the sort of environment in which they have grown up, the
Yeah.
cultural influences that they were exposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of I'm kind of with you on that, but it is sort of understandable in a way, especially if you're a little kid seeing these
Yeah,
terrible things.
I mean, I
I do
probably
feel
would
for
not imagine myself listening to Andrew Tate when I was a kid. I think
yeah.
it's mostly a question of temperament. So
Mm,
there are a lot of people on the right who have a specific temperament,
mm,
and so these people, when I was young, when I was like 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, there were a lot of videos on YouTube with pranks. So people were
Yeah,
pranking
yeah.
other people.
mm,
uh People were coming, there was this guy Vitaly ZDTV, uh
Oh yeah.
who, yeah, like a pranker, a pickup guy. Now he is hunting pedophiles.
Oh.
But back in the days, he was like making those joke videos.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Mhm,
the same group of people who used to consume this content and are now consuming Andrew Tate, and the prank sort of YouTube space, it basically is non-existent, as far as I know. It's not like I was binge watching it either, but
mhm,
there is a sort of fundamental trend that Andrew Tate has changed. And before Andrew Tate, there were also the manosphere that started after, like, mirroring the sort of incel movement,
mhm,
mid 2010s. So there was also the manosphere,
mhm.
uh, I don't know how they are doing. I was not watching them at all.
I don't know if they recovered
Uh,
from the death of Gonzalo Lira. Like, nah.
yeah, yeah. It's well, they also had this I think Rouge V.
Oh yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what's up with
yeah.
it.
Ah, yeah, that's
Yeah, but I mean Gonzalo Lira. I remember Gonzalo Lira has invited me once
oh
to
wow.
his podcast in like 2021 or 2022. Maybe you can still find this video or it's deleted.
Okay.
That's before he
Before
has
he went,
done this like
yeah.
round tables where like he's got James Lindsay talking about how like the Ukraine war and how like Klaus Schwab has everything to do with it. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, so
Fucking hell.
before that, I remember I was on, and there are a few other people who were on, who are now I think Reuters, and
Hmm.
basically I think on the stream he asked me like if I watched his video, and I said yes, and then I also said that the the advices that he gives about women are like correct or and and I just watched before I went to the interview. I like binge watched like 4 of his videos, and I made notes. And he was like, he was such a fucking creep.
Oh, he's a weird
Yeah.
guy.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
yeah,
looking at some.
he
Yeah, yeah.
filmed himself from multiple directions. He was talking about how he's better than like every single person, how like etc. But a lot of the advices, like some of the advices, they were common sense or something, and for that I have complimented him. But also, he's got this interesting thinking. I remember one of the videos I watched of him. He was talking about how the process of learning, and he was making this anti-education video, uh, sort of a rant against the public system, where he was talking about that the purpose of learning is to sort of to tell back to the teacher what the teacher wants to hear from you.
Mhm.
And that sort of spoke to me on on some level, because I've knew some people in my life who thought this way, and none of them were ever successful. Obviously you want to learn stuff so you could use it later,
Yeah.
not because like you want to satisfy the teacher, and learning is fundamentally not a virtue. So he doesn't view learning within the university environment as a form of virtue. So that pretty much said a lot about that person. Not to say, not to like argue against teacher biases, but it would be hard to make an argument about that in like a math
Well,
class
when you
where
learn something,
obviously.
you're not actually learning
Yeah.
it for the test. You're learning it to like improve your knowledge. The test is just, I don't know, something that the teachers give out. But
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So, and after that I sort of made my mind on him, and I was also weirded out by how he like filmed himself from multiple angles.
like that.
We have a few conversations on Discord with him, and that was before the war, and he was telling me how Putin was based.
Oh, God.
And that's interesting. So I was completely not surprised, and then when the war broke out, he demanded me like to denounce Zelensky immediately, and I and then it's like either do it, or like we're enemies or whatever. By the way,
What?
those DMs are released after he died.
Yeah. How do you?
So he
Let me
can
just
be
stay there. How do you
shooting
go
me.
from like this talking about yeah, women are trash to
Yeah.
this to looking like
Yeah.
the Grinch being arrested by
Well,
the
I
Ukrainian
would
government?
say
Yeah.
it's a natural evolution. Honestly, I'm completely not surprised. It's like I mean, every person of the manosphere I think supports Russia. I think every single one. I mean, yeah, like it's like men like brutal stuff. Like if, for example, you invade someone, you're also strong, right? And so on some level, there is that level of respect for the invader, and also, because our elites are against it, well then, uh,
Yeah.
ultimately it's good. So which is the contrarian thinking. Um, Damn, I lost my train of thought. I wanted to say something. Oh yeah, so he demanded me to like denounce Zelensky, and that was weird. I said that I don't like Zelensky, and I mean I don't like Zelensky actually.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
you
don't, I
know,
don't really like him
but
either, but
like after like his country was invaded, like should what is like why would I do that? At what why, like maybe I could denounce him a year later. what what is this sort of time frame where, like, would you denounce Franklin Roosevelt after Germany declared war on his country, or the
mm,
Pearl Harbor? Like
Right,
it just
right.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I
That's snobbish.
declined, and then he basically blocked me, and he made a telegram post bitching about me. So that was
well, make it tell
I
it.
think
That's what he
mid
does. Bitch about people. That's Coach Red
yeah,
Pill to a T.
mid March, and we haven't spoken ever since.
Well, I
And
don't think you're
you
going to
know,
speak to him
then
anytime soon either.
well, yes, but he was alive for a year, and no, I mean it's so funny. Like, obviously, I have sort of mixed feelings about what happened. I don't particularly have mixed feelings about him getting arrested, but maybe there was some abuse in the sort of in jail, which
Mm.
cost his life. I mean, we wouldn't really know, but what he has done was so stupid.
Yeah, it's just
Like,
unbelievable.
what did he even expected,
It's
honestly?
like you're a foreign
And
national in the country shilling like sedition, shilling for the
Mm,
invader. It's
yes,
like it's just
yeah,
insane.
well,
yeah,
yeah,
pretty dumb.
and that's number one. And the second thing, which is even more interesting, there was this guy. Uh, I forgot his name, but he's basically, I think, a Mexican American. He has a heavy Mexican accent, and
Nick Fuentes?
thought, no,
I'm just kidding.
it's Facts Hunter, I think. Facts Hunter. He made a lot of documentaries
Oh
about
yeah.
Gonzalo Lira, what kind of person he is.
Mm.
And so, in one of those documentaries, he revealed an interesting thing. Gonzalo Lira was offered multiple times to be evacuated to Russia through multiple means. Either, it's
Wow.
going to be through a neutral country, or it's going to be through the border, so through
Yeah.
the war zone. A few people have offered him this, and he refused. So he refused to like run away to Mother Russia. But then after that was before, like after he got released the first time, or this no, sorry, the second time he got arrested, he decided to do this same thing, but to cross the border with Hungary, even though
Mm.
he can't leave Ukraine,
Yeah, because
Mm.
of his bail
right?
conditions. Yeah.
Yes. So he decided to openly break the law and like leave Ukraine legally to Hungary, not to Russia, but to an EU country, to Hungary. And I mean, that's just
Mm.
unbelievable level of stupidity, really.
Mm.
And of course, and what happened after is just history. It was pretty much predetermined. When he released, yeah, Facts Hunter, this guy, yes. So when he released these videos about his escape to Hungary on a motorbike, I was like, yeah, he's just not going to make it, and I was right.
Yeah, well, I knew about
And
Gonzalo Lira like from the past because yeah, he basically is like a shady guy that scanned like heaps of organizations and people out of all this money like multiple times, and then he starts shilling
yeah,
for Russia for some reason. It was very strange.
no, well, he was shilling for it before. It's just I think he wanted to sort of get some views, because at the point
Hmm.
it was a hot topic. the first videos I actually watched of him, I mean, one of the first videos on the war I watched from him, where he films himself in like a Kiev hotel, and he was basically uh like he couldn't keep his happiness, like he was just growling
Uh-huh.
from how happy he was that the war has broken out. And he was filming himself on the street. He was filming at a expensive hotel, and how like he was filming how people were like, I guess, sad. And yeah, and he was having a blast at the moment.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
like, yeah,
So
He's a crazy
yeah,
guy. But
yeah, that's
anyways,
yeah,
maybe we
he
should talk about
is.
something a bit more constructive than
Yeah,
Gonzo
oh
Lira.
yeah.
sure. That was very interesting though. Yeah, the guy kind of he does sort of look like an evil pug, like a pug with like a pug with evil plans, like
Yeah.
especially the like he's like, "Oh, they're not feeding me enough good dog food or protein." Yeah. So anyway, sorry. So that is very interesting. So back to the state of the right. Um we something I noticed about you, Ubersoy, you're a very deep thinker. Um, but you're also very along with that obviously goes you're also very creative. That goes with that. So one of the things that really stuck onto this, and perhaps this is along a similar vein, is the right wing's identity crisis. In a simple term, a lot of the right still clings to like outdated motifs, whether it's 1950s nostalgia or aesthetics that don't quite really resonate today. Um, what should a new kind of forward-thinking vision for the right actually look like?
Yeah, so what I would say is right wing progressivism, but that's obviously going to appeal to a limited amount of people.
Mm,
The
mhm.
thing with the right is that there's so much ideological diversity on the right. On the left, there isn't much ideological diversity. There's basically like three main camps. There are the liberals, the sort of socialists, and it then breaks down into multiple camps, like capitalist socialists, like Marxist,
Yeah.
Tanky, etc. And
Mm,
there's also the sort of identity politics left. So the left, which basically the mere equivalent of a white nationalist, but like in a sort of bi-Leninist sense, like they're
sure.
like, what's good for black people, what's good for gays, what's good for women, like
Mm,
this sort of
mm.
uh mirroring our position, but sort of in reverse, the
Yes.
identity politics. So
Mm,
there are three main branches of the left. On the right, I there are so many branches,
yeah.
like you'd get lost yourself.
Mm,
It's
mm, mm. You've kind of got the like what I would characterize it as the normie right, which a lot of people on our kind of
or
I
the
guess
boomer
side.
right, yes,
Yeah, the boomer right, which a
which is
lot
the
of
largest fraction, yeah.
yeah, yeah, well, the pro-Israel right, right?
Hmm.
And then you kind of got the dissident right, and that branches off into sort of the broadly speaking, the kind of the more Nazbol crowd, and then you've got the crowd that is I view as being more like you and Brandon and us, I suppose, a more a kind of right wing that isn't obviously isn't normie, but it's not just simply reflexive either, and it's trying to be original in its thought process and trying to actually think things through. That's broadly, but you're right. Even then, there's a lot of stuff going on there. But I would say, would you agree with that or?
Yes, I would agree with you. Though I would say that well, okay, here's what I think.
Sure.
I would say that there are primary three sort of main factions, as I was now thinking. What you have just described is the first one, largest one, the boomer right.
Hmm.
And then there is also the sort of fractions of the right that that are doing the thinking,
Mm,
and you can sort of look at them through their at in relation to their distance to the system. So
mm,
like you've got new reactionary stuff which are close enough to the system. Yeah, funny enough, it wasn't the case 4 years ago, but now it's completely different. You've got white nationalists, which are far from the system, which are but are getting there slowly.
mm,
You've got sort of neo Nazis, which
yeah.
are the farthest from the system.
Mm,
You've got the manosphere, also
mm,
pretty far from the system.
mm, mm,
Monarchists, it's just not serious.
mm, mm,
Libertarianism,
mhm,
close to the system.
mhm.
Think that the thing that I'm advocating for, I think it has the potential to become the system. And
Yeah.
when I'm looking at it, it doesn't like I don't see in it necessarily anything that would make it uh like averse to like integration, because
Mhm,
historically it has already happened in the early 20th century. A lot
mhm,
of western countries, and well, some variations of what I'm advocating for, and yeah, it has the potential, but obviously like that, like tens thousands of people are aware of it. A few thousands of people have read my manifesto,
mhm,
and also there are other people who are calling themselves right-wing progressivism, even though I'm the person who
mhm,
coined the term. So we have to like um I need to work and with the help of the people who enjoy my content
mhm,
to popularize it further. And also there's groypers.
mhm,
The groypers are very interesting because they have managed to get a huge reach on Twitter, just an immense reach on Twitter and on the younger generation.
mhm.
But I don't yet see how much of their stuff is being integrated into the system. They know how to do pressure to do certain things that they like.
Well, aren't
Mm,
some of these people in
Uh,
Doge like borderline groypers or something like that? That's what I heard.
mhm,
Or is that not true?
yeah, well, there's also borderline groypers.
Yeah.
Or also, I mean, there's groypers, there's borderline groypers. Some people call me a borderline groyper. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's true, but I mean, I sort of see where this is coming from. Like, if we count the borderline groyper people, then like I think it would certainly put groypers as the most successful, not just youth rightist movement, but probably e-right movement
mhm.
on the right. And also there's accelerationism stuff
Right,
uh,
right.
that I'm also quite I'm most closely tied to this sort of uh, you know
Oh, really?
AI guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
sure,
thought you were
sure,
going to
sure,
say
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Accelerism.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I was
Accelerationism.
saying no,
Oh,
but he
what?
means like
No,
AI.
no. I mean, it's
Yeah.
EEC manifesto. Bev J, like the opposite of sorry. There's Jeff Bezos and there's Bev Jesus. So he's the one who runs the movement, and he's been on Joe Rogan. He's influential. Sometimes Elon Musk engages with him. So I would generally describe them as falling under the right wing progressive umbrella. But one downsides with them is that yes, they're anti woke. Yes, they're on the right. But they're not particularly racialists, and they're more focused on sort of technological accelerationism as opposed to biological accelerationism. And I think we should focus on both technological and biological accelerationism.
Interesting. Yeah, and okay, so
And they
that's
also have an insanely high degree of being able to integrate with the system, and they're already integrating with the system as of now.
yeah.
So they're pretty successful.
Mm.
Yeah, for
I
better or for
think.
worse, like the America
Mhm.
First movement has done a lot of things, but uh, yeah. Anyways, I guess
Mhm.
from there, it's like, what do you think's going to be the future with like the Trump, Trump's second term? People, we're only about a month in. People have mixed opinions so far. What do you think? Is the future bright? Is he just going to sort of cuck out and do nothing? What do
Uh,
you think?
well, he seems to be cocking out a little bit
Hmm.
on deporting people. So he needs to deport at least like
5,000 a
a
day?
thousand.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I said 5,000, but like if
Ideally
he
more.
wants to,
Yeah.
yeah, if he wants to at least beat Obama by a margin, he needs at least 2,000. There are rumors that there are like 10 million illegals. I'm not sure how true it is. I don't know how many illegals there are in general, but he needs to be deporting a lot more. But he has removed birthright citizenship. A lot of groypers are sort of in freak out mode, like vindicated,
Yeah.
told you so about Trump right now.
Mhm.
But I don't think he's doing that bad necessarily.
Okay.
Even the war with Iran, there is no evidence that Trump wants to start war with Iran. He wants to dissolve tensions with Iran if they like stop their nuclear research. He wants to like stop the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
He stopped the Gaza war. I mean, obviously, if he
Well,
ends up deporting Palestinians from their homeland, like I don't support that. But at least he, for now, has stopped the killing. I like his foreign policy, uh, but and domestic policy too. But he really needs to pump up those arrest numbers.
yeah, I mean, these are
The
deportation
average is
numbers
like
now.
700. It's below Obama, and if it's below Obama,
It's like, come on, what are you
like
doing? Come on.
Mhm.
yeah,
You read on a campaign of mass deportations, basically, and you're not even close. You need to, like,
yeah.
10x these numbers.
I think we need to give Trump some time. A lot of the things he promised for, they're being realized, and I really like that. Most of the things that are being realized are like for Zionists. So Zionists are very much satisfied with Trump, and
Mhm.
people who aren't, they may lament the fact. But the point is, Trump of 2016 and Trump of 2024 are completely different people. Trump
Mhm.
of 2024, he is at least going on, like he's fulfilling the promises he gave. Dog thing working, uh, tech free speech. He reversed the TikTok ban, and TikTok, for instance, was a prominent voice for example, even anti-Zionism.
Mhm.
uh, I support unbanning TikTok, but TikTok needs to get regulated in a
Mhm.
way that like rightists aren't banned from the
Yeah. Well, it's not
platform.
a free speech
Uh,
platform, so
It's not a free speech platform. It was a free speech platform for like anti-Zionists
Mhm.
and Zionists. But when it comes to the left and the right, if you're not a mainstream conservative, you're going to get your account removed. And I'm hoping that TikTok is going to get restored under the condition that it's going to become a free speech platform. Uh,
yeah, that'd be
so
good.
there's that. I mean, there's a lot of things. He signed over like 200 executive orders in a single day, I think.
I don't think it was that
He
many, but
signed,
it was a lot. It was a lot, wasn't it? It was like 50, I think. Oh,
no,
whatever.
oh, yeah, but maybe it's within the first days it was over
Oh,
200.
yeah,
But
maybe in the first 2 weeks, yeah.
yeah, so I'm really impressed so far with what we're seeing.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing that I liked so far is the stopping the USA aid
Yeah.
funding and the formation of dog. So the formation of dog is really how you should do politics in modern days. Like if you look at leaders, if you look at the best polling leaders in the democratic states, not authoritarian states, it's people like Nayib Bukele who solved the crime issue in El Salvador.
Mm.
He did, it through brutal methods, but he solved the crime issue. Now there's a lot of investment into El Salvador. The economy is growing, and so that's great. And I think Dog is a reflection of that and of Javier Milei's rule of Argentina. So I'm
Mm.
looking at a lot of those leaders. They may be like sort of libertarian leaning. They may not exactly be like where I'm at on issues of race, but I really enjoy how they're governing.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's I think it's excellent, and
Mm.
but I think it's still I would wait for the first 100 days before I comment further.
Yeah. Well, Trump's
Um,
saying like pretty good stuff that he's going to go after like the Pentagon with Doge, which is
yeah,
crazy. But if he actually
Mm.
managed to pull that off, that'll be like
he
pretty
should
epic.
go after every single department with Doge.
Yeah,
Wow.
FBI.
And
Yeah.
Mm.
yes.
How would
Oh,
that
yeah.
work?
And he declassified also a lot of the documents.
Hmm.
Is it?
America is supposed to be this free liberal country, yet they have a lot of documents which are classified for some reason. Then like Facebook worked and Twitter worked with Biden administration to silence like political opponents, and like seriously, is that supposed to be a sort of liberal democratic
Yeah.
laissez-faire country
Well,
where the government doesn't interfere with like private business?
yeah, well,
Uh,
that's the thing as well. I mean,
we
when
have
you
to
looked at the
fix
Twitter
this.
files, some of the stuff they're removing was like just some nobody with like 2 likes. It's crazy.
Yes.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for example, Russia in 2010, 2011, it was an authoritarian country, politically
Hmm.
speaking. For example, you couldn't elect your own governors. So the governors are appointed by Putin,
Mhm.
and he has also like falsified elections. He controlled most of the media, but his rule did not extend to the internet. And sort of the first crackdown on the Russian internet happened in 2011, which is basically was related to the Moscow 2011 protests against election falsification. A lot of people were protesting, and then the second crackdown happened after, like, they basically banned pro-Ukrainian groups from Russian equivalent of Facebook, which is VK.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, funny enough, like, why do they even care if like these are groups, they're Ukrainian groups, they aren't like Russian groups which are pro-Ukrainian or whatever. So I found it interesting, and then it went on, and now like there's more and more crackdown. But right now, or at least before Trump, uh our situation with the tech, you could say, basically reflected Russia's situation of 2014. Like we basically were uh, like Russia in 2014
Mm.
in terms of free speech on Twitter.
Mhm.
And the thing with Russia in 2014 and even now, they can't like ban the opposition. They don't have the power to ban the opposition. There's still the Russian opposition can still be seen on Telegram, on
I've
YouTube.
always
They have
wondered
no
that.
means to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they essentially can say whatever they want. They can only regulate like their rights outside of the internet, which is what they're doing. But yeah, they didn't manage to ban them, but our system did. And so you could say that we're even more hardcore. At least we were even more hardcore than Russia 2 years ago. And so it's not a good sign. And now, for example, Durov, the guy who launched the Russian
Telegram.
VK
Oh no.
network, who
Oh.
invented Telegram, yeah, now they're pressuring him. He had to run from Russia because the government was coming after VK for him refusing to
That's right.
like give data of Ukrainian users to
Right.
the Russian security
Where's
services. But now France is doing the exact same thing.
Mm.
So and
yeah?
he can't leave France. He was arrested. I mean, this is crazy.
Where is the
And
Telegram servers hosted? Because I do you know that?
in Qatar, sorry,
Oh,
in UAE, I think
oh,
in
okay. Yeah.
UAE.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's not hosted in the EU, and like it's completely ridiculous. Why should the EU have power over it? Um, it really sad stuff, and I'm mostly hopeful that Trump administration is going to do something about it because the more this goes further, the less we'll have freedoms, and our ability to influence opinion is mostly determined on whether we have a fair chance at saying our word on social media. If we don't have it, then Zoomers would like be less red pilled than millennials,
Yeah.
Mhm.
um, and would all be gay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
That's what I would be concerned about with the Trump incursion on the intelligence sector. Is that an intelligence sector that really represent us, or is it the interests of Musk, Vivek, Sundar Pichai, Andreessen, Horowitz, all these
Yeah.
people, and of course
Yeah.
the J lobby, the Israeli lobby, I should say,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, it could actually,
It mostly represents their interests.
which is a
It
problem.
represents their interests more than ours.
Mm.
But when it comes to the interests of the tech right and our interests, in 90% of the cases, our interests are identical. Maybe 80% of the cases. We may disagree on immigration, of like Indian immigration, but everything else, I think the agreement is pretty much one to one. There's no disagreement between those who care about free speech and the tech right. And
Mm.
despite everything that they've done, I'm still hopeful um,
It'll be
that
int-
they'll do
you know,
more.
it'll be interesting to see what these elements, how powerful and important these elements of sort of broader culture and intelligence, these two sectors in their own right, if you will, which will be
Yeah, I
more
mean,
powerful and more important
uh,
in the future for us. Because certainly I do see some of the culture perhaps going our way, or it's perhaps analogous in a certain sense, as long as we can latch onto that culture effectively and steer it our way, as long as we're smart enough to do that. But in the case of,
yeah,
I mean, it does look, I think we could safe to say he is going to, the Trump admin is going to kind of further consolidate power in the intelligence sector and AI for his benefactors. And we all know who his, Miriam Adelson and the former that I mentioned.
yes, yes,
So it'll be interesting to see, well, can the culture, which I think we can have more sway on, is can it overcome eventually the intelligence, which I view as very important actually, and having a lot of power. Um,
hmm
did you have any? I mean, maybe that's what we should talk about in respect to Trump 2.0
yeah,
and the current political landscape. I mean, what should, I guess, the global right be actually focusing on, and
Yeah.
what do you see as the
What should we
future
focus
for
on?
national?
Yeah. Okay. You literally said what I was about to say. Yep.
What do you see as the future for nationalist movements worldwide? Um, Future of the right and pragmatic solutions, Ubersoy.
yeah. Well, I think the fundamental thing that we should all believe in is sort of fundamental constitutional rights to uh, autonomy and other freedoms like free speech. That's the most crucial aspect because if we don't have it, they can do with us whatever they'd like to do. If we don't have it, we have no means to shape public opinion. Even if you don't believe in free speech yourself, you still have to support it because supporting it is in your interests. The left is not the one getting silenced or whatever, we are. And so it's in our interests to like uphold these values. Number one, and number two is to find sort of unified theory, focus on it, like biorealism, make it a sort of a lens, transform it into a lens, and make sure this lens infects as many people as possible.
Mm,
Once you're doing that, the rest is, basically matters of how to implement them into policy. But before you implement it into policy, you have to convince enough people that this is the way forward. You can't just, implement policy without doing any sort of prep work.
mm, mm,
Uh, the support has to be there before you're actually going on with something.
mm. Yeah, yeah, certainly. And yeah, and so there's the support, and then there's the pragmatic solutions. And something I think that is very key to what you said is with propaganda, you don't necessarily view things as being propaganda, but it's more of sort of like a subconscious mechanism where it leads you by suggestions, deep suggestions that you're not necessarily even conscious of. So something like Starship Troopers may, when people view that when they're young, that may
Yeah,
cause
well,
division.
Starship Troopers, like you can have Starship Troopers, like maybe in Israel or Russia,
Mm,
but in countries where the military basically plays no role, I don't know, like it just doesn't make sense. Instead of the military, we could have, I don't know, sort of rich people.
mhm.
If you're not rich, you. But no,
Yeah, no, that's a
obviously,
good one. There's,
I
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, like what I advocate for and write is sort of right wing manifesto is that the people who should have political power and power to vote for policy directly, bypassing the what I term nomenclatura, which is
Mhm,
like a collection of sort of interest lobbies, congressmen, etc. So all
mhm,
of that apparatus, I'm thinking that we should vote on policy online, and those who are able to vote on policy would be able to do so through a form of voting licenses, which they would get if they passed political literacy tests. And also, there is a virtuous component to it. So, for example, if you are successfully financially, if you're successful reproductively, if like you're giving to charity, if you have served in the military, you get more votes than an average person. So I don't believe like one person, one vote. I think one's vote should like, somebody's vote should be 10, the other person's vote should be one, and the third person shouldn't vote if he can't pass a test. So I believe that the principles of the market should also drive the principles of how we do politics. Because in our world, look, people have different sums of money. Some people have like, I don't know, $10,000 saved. Some people are in debt. Some people are multi-millionaires, and some people basically don't have income at all. So, and given that and also the same thing with like social media, right?
mhm.
People's influences are completely different. 10 million influencer, 2 million
Yeah.
influencer, etc. And so I think that just like in real life people's output is unequal, it should also be unequal in politics. And this inequality, I want this inequality to be meritocratic, directly corresponsive to how much stuff these people learn about they know about
Sure.
politics, and how virtuous their life is. Because you don't want like a person like, I don't know, Noam who is this sort of complete leftist degenerate who is very intelligent. Well, I don't know, maybe Vosh.
He's
Uh,
not that
Let's say
intelligent.
Vosh. I mean, he is not particularly well read, but I mean, he probably has like two standard deviations IQ or whatever. Like
Oh, I think that's
he is
generous.
intelligent. Whatever. Look, I think he has high fluid intelligence. He's not well read, that's true, but whatever. So a person like Vash, who has no children, lives a degenerate lifestyle, who, what he does is basically shit talks other people on YouTube. His vote should be
Negative.
weighed differently than a vote of, let's say, a woman who has multiple children and who is, you know, th- maybe donates to charity, engages in sort of other pro-social stuff, and his vote maybe would have been counted as 3 and her vote would have been counted as 6, because again, I don't think we should discriminate against people based on their political views. If someone, is a Marxist, it doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to vote. But I think because personal is political, you want to incentivize sort of good personality. We want to have people with good personalities, with good sort of not declared personality, but sort of output, with good social output to sway politics,
Yeah.
not complete like degenerates. Uh, so a lot of those leftist philosophers, they happen to be, people who are not very pleasant personally, and whereas a lot of conservatives are generally more pleasant socially. That's what I have noticed. Some people may disagree with me, but if you look at the biography of successful people, the biography of a conservative, and their personal life is completely different than the biography of like some leftist. The
Yeah,
difference is
absolutely.
immense, and so it will undercut their power, but it will undercut their power without necessarily reversing to like authoritarian measures.
Yeah.
So we'll still have a democracy, an improved democracy, but the one which tilts a certain way.
I like that term, improved democracy. Enhanced democracy. It
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
yeah.
Totally. Well, I think one of the way that we actually need to improve democracy is through the culture and bringing back a sense of, you may call it eugenics, you can call it whatever, but problem is why there's so much factionalization that is not sort of nationalist, which is where we really want to center things around. Nationalist, and I would say anti-Marxist, because Marxism, in all its various iterations, is merely a Trojan horse or a package to basically, uh, you know, replicate cancer across everything and basically destroy your nation in favor of the nation that is sort of using it against you. So it is an inherently a weakening force. But the problem why Marxism, and obviously such a horrible ideology, which is, I think it's debatable whether we should even have, whether Marxism should really, or in what form, do we allow it? Should we even have it? Should it be legal? Um, Problem why Marxism is allowed,
Mhm.
why it can thrive so well, is because people's minds, even if they call themselves one thing or another, they might call themselves a Christian, they might call themselves a Muslim, they might call themselves a conservative, a liberal. People's, whatever they may think they are, people's minds are on such shifting sands all the time. Their mind is like shifting sands. There is really no historical grounding or basis to their thinking. There's no deep learning that it leads people to be very vulnerable to these Marxist and civilizational destroying ideas, which
Mhm.
do have, and
Well,
we've seen
okay.
that.
So can I ask you a question? What Marxism are you referring to? Are you referring to economic Marxism or cultural Marxism?
Oh, both,
Okay.
the
Well,
entirety.
yeah.
Yes,
Okay. So the economic Marxism, like it's just never going to happen.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
People have a lot of things to lose. They're not going to give their property rights. There's not like there is no class warfare or anything. There is like sort of generational resentment. Oh, you boomers had this much stuff, we don't have as many stuff ourselves. There's that, but I mean, like
Yet there is
it's always been the
organizations
case.
like Big Tech and the WEF and Davos,
Hmm.
and there is the
Well,
USAID, which is
well,
a Marxist
the
sort of attempt.
WEF,
Go
from
ahead. Sorry.
what I, yeah, from what I know, and I'm yet to read Klaus Schwab's book on like the New
Yeah.
World Order stuff. These
Mhm,
people are basically they're globalist, corporatist. They
mhm,
are liberal, but they're like I wouldn't they're definitely not Marxist. They believe in property rights. They aren't particularly too fond of the idea of the nation state. They're more of an expression of this our liberal oligarchy that we have, developed organically in the past 30 or 40 years. Those international corporations, immigration, they seem to be like a combination of liberals and
mhm,
like globalists, yeah,
mhm,
liberal globalists who are into big corporations, this controlling, like managing, attaining collective ends through the power of big organizations. That's what they're into. But I mean, like, there is no evidence that they're actually like socialist. I don't think they are socialist in any meaningful way.
mhm.
Uh,
Many might say
yeah,
the same of
like
Putin.
supporting the green agenda. It like
Mhm,
yes, it does has some correlations with a lot of socialist support as well, but they're supporting it for a completely different reason. Um, I would not like there is no evidence that they don't necessarily that they reject property rights or that they're doing any of this like worker ownership or like there are just no socialist red alarms, no socialist alarms that ring a bell. I would not consider them socialist and culturally. I mean, they're not that big on culture, from what I understand. I
mhm,
mean, they're globalists, they're liberal, but they're not that into sort of culture war. I don't know.
mhm.
I would sort of dismiss. So there are a lot of like WEF conspiracy theories. I don't know. I don't
I'm pretty sure the
particularly.
WEF like plays up some of them themselves. They sort of like the reputation.
I don't know. Yeah, I need to read Klaus Schwab's book. I've
Yeah.
read a review of it. Yeah, not always I have the time, but maybe I'll probably read it this year. Maybe write a Substack article about it. But the topic's not trending anymore. Anyways, I think Klaus Schwab he's no longer the president. I think that there's
Mhm,
somebody else,
mhm.
even though he's a face of it. But yeah, no, I don't think it's
Yet he had a bust
they're
of
trying
Lenin.
to implement Marxism. But cultural Marxism, yeah, I mean it's a threat. It is
Mhm.
a threat. But
You
I
don't
think
think that? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
mhm.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
I was just want to. I actually have a video explaining what is cultural Marxism on my YouTube. That after the stream people could watch. Uh, I think it is what we should be worrying about,
Mhm,
because no serious person, and especially the elites, are going to like voluntarily give up their income that they've earned
mhm,
and their sort of livelihood,
mhm. No, nor
because
with
people are
Putin and
individuals.
his oligarchs too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to happen. There are incentive for global mega corporations. That's certainly the case, and WEF would work closer in achieving certain like collective goals through these corporations and governmental and institutional cooperation. But I
Mhm,
would not like worry about them necessarily. I would
mhm,
be worried more about cultural Marxists, which are
mhm,
quite popular. And there's also a debate whether they are even Marxists. I'm the one who is saying that their origins are Marxian origins.
Mhm,
But ultimately, I'm with Eric Kaufman in the idea that a lot of the like woke, what we refer to as wokeness, is simply emotionally driven,
mhm,
and this emotion was generated by our culture, which was more recent. But if you look at, for example, the works of James Lindsay before he gone crazy, or the Christopher Rufus book that was released, I think, 2 years ago, he does construct a very interesting anthology of how these leftist ideas of like such as intersectionality, on race, have really evolved from Marxism, from Marxist conceptions. And it is, as I was saying, I am a political science graduate, and so I was exposed to a lot of those ideas when I was in university. I learned about the critical race theory. I learned about Karl Marx. I learned about, all of the sort of classical Frankfurt School cultural Marxists. Not all of them, obviously, but I've read some of their works. They also had a big impact on culture. For example, Walter Benjamin, I remember I wrote an essay about him, and so there is those Marxist origins, but at this point, I think they are mostly, if we're
mhm,
looking at popular movements, they're mostly emotional. The leaders, yes, a lot of them would even describe themselves openly as trained Marxists,
mhm,
but they themselves are operating on sort of epistemology, which yes came about from Marxism. Did not came about from liberalism, but it sort of became its own thing. There
mhm,
was no such thing as, for example, intersectionality in Marxist analysis. There was no such thing, or the idea that like class was the most important human division. And the current ones, they're not even talking about property rights. They're not talking about the labor theory of value. They're not uh,
mhm,
talking about, like, they're not even historical materialists.
mhm,
uh,
mhm,
these new ones are a completely different breed, and I think we should focus on them as a new breed that yes has shared historical legacy with Marxists. But Marxists and these people, I think they've gone sort of astray to a point that we could regard them as something new.
mhm, mhm. Right, right. Do you think Ubersoy that a class of capitalists can eventually replicate Marxist aims in the country that they find themselves in? Because with a lot of what I see
Yeah,
is that
one of the prominent libertarian philosophers have actually made an argument that maybe it was Burnham or Murray. I forgot who it was. Sorry, Rothbard. Forgot who it was, but basically the argument was that capitalism through regulations leads towards socialism. And liberal democracies are easy to subvert, and
Mhm,
people like Karl Popper have obviously developed mechanisms against that. Ultimately, I do share their uh, concern to some extent, especially in regards to like what was raised by Karl Popper. But uh, ultimately, they're talking about managerialism. They're not talking about socialism. Managerialism is a different thing from socialism. I mean, it's sort of, if on one
similar, right?
hand,
In a way, it can
well,
result in a similar situation.
so if you've got capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism on one way and socialism on the other, managerialism would of course be somewhere in the middle. But managerialism, it's, I think, as I write about my manifesto, I look at managerialism, not I just come to the conclusion that it's simply natural, and it's a natural consequence of society's growing complexity. When societies are complex enough, there must be regulation at every level of the hierarchy,
Yeah.
at production, at distribution, if we're talking about a company, and of course the nation. You've got like the ministry, the ministry's division of power, a lot of different things. It's just not avoidable
Well, I mean, you
for
need
me.
some
So
regulations, right? I mean, you can't just rip off like consumers
yeah,
and stuff.
Certainly,
yeah, and the welfare
absolutely.
state. I mean, these things you can't just have without in a complex capitalist society. And I think that capitalism, I mean, that's, if capitalism had an end goal, it would be something like this. It would not be socialism because, again, sort of like, for example, the invention of property rights. What I don't like about historical materialism, as it's understood by Marxism, when property rights are invented, you can't uninvent it. They're going to be defined forever.
Yeah.
It's how the system would operate with until the end.
Mhm.
So once this invention has occurred and it's a very useful invention, everybody loves it. It can just be undone.
Mhm.
Well, I
So
guess
I'm
someone
not
would
concerned.
argue that like feudalism was a type of property rights, and that was like undone.
Yes, it's a property rights which humans were or the land where humans lived were the property of certain nobilities which got their privileges as a result of heredity. It's
Do you think, though, Ubersoy, that using
Mhm.
sort of the phenomenon by importing blacks through Section 8 housing and the mass interspersement of Hispanics into formerly white communities, where we get the phenomenon known as white flight. Do you think this is sort of causing the housing prices to rise? Do you think this is sort of the elites' way, whomever may be responsible, but the effect is that essentially housing is more scarce and therefore property
It's more
therefore it is
consolidated,
sort of
right?
owned by the government, and there's sort of maybe they're not directly getting rid of it, but in a way through Section 8 housing with blacks, and then you've got the Hispanic mass migration, and you have Indians.
Mhm.
We all know that sort
Yes.
of thing. That's sort of a way in which the
Yes. So the house, sorry, the process of housing is directly determined by discrepancies in supply and demand, just like everything else.
Yeah.
And so, if, for example, look, I'm yet to see an instance in which government construction of buildings, with the assumption that the market is also doing its own share, has led to an increase in house prices. I mean, that's just something unthinkable. Like, if you have any examples, you can cite it to me. But when it comes to moving a lot of people into a certain place where there's not enough of housing supply, yes, that increases house prices. It increases house prices, and obviously people who own property already, for example, people who'd be living in cities like Vancouver, Manhattan, well, that's part of New York, but Manhattan specifically, San Francisco, they have an incentive to bring a lot of people there because it skyrockets their their uh, the, their property,
Yeah.
which they could then sell at a better price. So, I mean, there is an incentive, uh, but there's also incentive to sort of bring immigrants in the first place. And that's, I think, the strongest criticism of capitalism that I think I agree with. But of course, it can be easily managed too. And it's been put by people like Ricardo Duchesne, who reject the sort of cultural Marxist thesis. They think that what we're seeing now is basically like the logic of capitalism, which I don't share, but I sort of see where is coming at. And so the logic of bringing more immigrants is so that companies can grow more profit, more sort of workforce. That's number one. Number two is to ease the welfare, because there's a aging population, and so we need a lot of taxpayers to support them. But obviously, the problem with this argument is that eventually the people who you brought in would grow older, and so it's a reinforcing cycle that can only be broken by increasing the fertility rate. We don't have an increasing fertility rate. The right wing arguments are against immigration are going to be a lot more difficult,
Well, I
but they're
guess you
going
could
to be
say they're
very
sort of,
easy.
it's like circular though, because of the increased cost of living, it's harder for people to, settle down and start a family and whatnot when two parents have to be working all the time to be able to afford the mortgage or rent, right? So the
Yeah.
cost of living, I think it's like pretty much, isn't it pretty much proven that the higher cost of housing and living causes lower fertility rates, at least to a degree?
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Well, first of all, lower income people have more children than high income people. That's number one. I have not studied this question in particular. I mean, I saw some tendencies in which, after a crisis, fertility rate goes down. For example, in Russia, after 2014, after the sanctions and the oil price went down, they had, like, before 2014, their fertility was 1.8. Now it's 1.4.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some argument to it, but again, the fertility rate of Russia has not increased in the past 2 years, even though the Russian standard of living, despite all the sanctions, has actually increased. As counterintuitively as you may, sort of, it may be hard to believe,
Well,
but it
wages have
is
been
the
going up
case.
there because there's like basically a labor shortage because everyone's being like conscripted or being
Um,
forced to work in the defense
yes, the
industry.
price of labor is going up, and also the people who are going to the war, they're getting insane wages that put them into the top 2% immediately.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they have insane wages. And so after they come from the war, they spend it and they boost the Russian consumption economy. So, yeah, um, that's that. But the fertility rate hasn't increased,
Well,
which
okay.
is interesting.
Well, wouldn't conscript like there's what, like a million men conscripted into the Russian army? I mean, you wouldn't have fertility rates
Well,
when.
no, 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 no. Well, okay. Have you heard about it's this Milton Friedman's sort of economies of scale?
Yeah.
If, like, the production of pencil, right? So, like, if you're, even, for example, if I have $1 million and I spend $1 million in my local town, everybody becomes richer
Yeah.
because it gets spread in this sort of a sequence of production and sequence of consumption and services. So even if, yes, these people have benefited the most, but other people have benefited too. And if we're talking about scale, other people have actually benefited more than the Russian soldiers who are returning back from the war, because they've been involved in, like, hundreds and thousands of transactions involving this money, which was originally, like, given to soldiers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that money originates from like it's the sale. I mean, what like the sale of oil that the government makes and they pay it to the soldiers. I mean,
Actually, no, it's just being printed.
oh,
It's
just being
printed
printed.
out
Okay.
of thin air.
Well,
Yeah,
that's fractional
yeah.
reserve banking for you,
And
right?
and that's why the Russian inflation for the past 2 years has been more than 10%. Yeah,
Well, I guess you could call that
it's
an
not
economic
without the
woe. Yeah.
downsides.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, once you've got like if you're pumping out a bunch of currency to pay for soldiers, that makes sense that there's a lot of inflation. So,
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Amazing, amazing. Do you think? Can I just ask one last thing? And Hector, do we need to wrap up or?
I just want to I just want to add a little bit to this discussion on fertility rates. I do think lowering the cost of living will increase fertility rates, but what other solutions do you have then if it's not that? Like, what would your solution be,
Hmm.
Mr. Soy?
Well, increasing the fertility rate, I think, would be most easy if we begin to view children as labor. Uh, the historic fertility decline happened in Eastern European countries that went uh, through the communist sort of socialist selective pressures, in which children could no longer uh, be exploited for money, whereas Americans and many Europeans have made money through their children, that the children supported the family, they were a resource, and ever since that stopped being the case, the fertility has declined. So that's number one. Also, there is women's participation in the workforce, that's number two.
Yeah, that's probably a big
But
one.
fundamentally, if it's not, if children are perceived as a net cost as opposed to a net benefit financially, then there's not going to be incentives for having children. So you need incentives. Obviously, there's also a cultural aspect to it.
Right.
For like those who are far left, they don't have children, whereas extreme conservatives have a lot of children. So there's also cultural aspect.
Hmm.
But I think that
How could you make
a
it
lot
like?
of it is just economic. What?
Oh, I was going to say, what's some economic benefits? Like, could you, if you have children, you have a lower retirement age, you get paid like per
Yeah, well,
child or something
I
like that?
mean, yeah, there are tax cuts
Yeah,
for
tax cuts.
people who have more than three children, large tax cuts. Uh, we probably should lower child labor to maybe 12 years old. You know, obviously, not making them work on
Send it,
factories, but
send them back
like
in the mines.
no, no, no. I mean, they could do something like really simple. We could also create special jobs for children, the jobs that only children could do, and they could bring a lot of benefit. And after this happens to be the case, then children would like leave their parents at an earlier age, as opposed to what is the case now. They would and they would have children themselves earlier, not when they're 30, but when they're 25.
Well, that comes back to cost of living
So
again, right? Because people are living with their parents more because it's too expensive to, rent their own place or buy their own place, right? So that sort of comes back to
yes,
cost of living.
uh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things
Mhm,
that goes into this equation.
mhm.
So it's complicated, but look, if you look at Israel, for example, their average fertility rate is 2.9 children per woman. So a lot of places have actually succeeded despite being a first world nation in having a large fertility rate. So if we study Israel enough and other countries that are successful, I think we
Yeah,
would
like
be
Hungary's had
successful
partial
ourselves too.
success. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No longer. It's like 1.6 or 1.5. I don't think it's a partial
Yeah.
success.
Oh, well, I mean, it used to be like 1 or like 1.1.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
gone up, but it's not up high enough. So it's been a little bit of a success
Yeah.
there. And they basically gave tax cuts. So there's been like minor
Yeah,
successes
and
there.
some people have applauded Poland as a success. Now it's like 1.2, I think. Yeah,
1.2 is
I
pretty
don't
low,
know.
yeah.
Those Eastern European countries, they I think none of them were successful in terms of fertility. We should look at Israel and copy whatever they're doing.
But
We
what are
should
they doing?
study. Well, if you look at their fertility breakdown, most of the fertility, the highest fertility rate is with ultra religious
Oh, yeah,
population.
yeah,
So
yeah. That
they're
makes sense.
culturally more incentives to have incentivized to have children. And two, the Israeli government is actually very generous welfare wise. So not only religious Jews get welfare just for being religious Jews. Yes, Israel is a like I mean it's a supremacist country. Like there is no equal civil rights. They don't have civil rights like we do. And you know, different people are judged differently in society on a legal basis, not just on cultural basis. So not only do they receive welfare for just being religious Jews, but also there are special benefits for people who have a lot of children.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very
and
interesting.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
No, no,
Go.
no.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I just wanted to say something really quick. I think what you touched upon earlier is really interesting. How you said that in terms of fertility, you're basically outlining in comparison today when there's no dependence, or rather than having children and having a wife is an incentive and makes sense and is good for survivability. It's actually a great cost and is actually very burdensome and time consuming. Whereas if you look at the African jungle, it actually makes sense to get a wife and have as many children as possible.
yeah. They're
And
using children for labor there, and that's why the incentives for having children are tremendous there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's for survival, so that when you get old, you can have people look after you, and it makes sense to get a wife as soon as you can, and so that you can survive, and it's actually a good thing, and it's not a burden, and it makes the many hands like make light work, and they're making it easier for themselves. So if in some way we could replicate, as just purely as an analogy, replicate that in modern society, which I believe we once had to a degree. But I believe if we were able to think along those lines as an analogy, then perhaps we would be more successful that way. Another thing, in terms of actually getting there, so to speak, is in terms of actually making it happen, I would say that we should just put advertisements of babies everywhere, cute
Yeah.
babies,
Psychological
um,
Mhm.
type stuff, right?
because
Yes,
women
yes.
have a very strong response to seeing a baby or babies on a TV
Hmm.
commercial, or a TV show, or or like a shampoo, like Dove soap
Yeah.
advertisement. They have like
Yeah.
an instance of babies rabies, seeing cute babies, and
Yeah.
they go,
Yes.
yeah, they get so excited, and they get really, I've got to have my own bed. It's almost like how there was like a Tamagotchi craze
Yeah.
around like 6 to 7 year olds. Oh, I got my Tamagotchi. Look at me. There was sort of like a feeling of the in crowd. Another thing about female psychology is that there is a very strong element of being a part of the in group, the in crowd, feeling part of the group, and not being
Hmm.
ostracized. So if you can somehow make it as a trend to,
Yes.
make, oh, this is a fashionable thing,
Yes. Yes.
look at
Yes.
the advertising the babies everywhere, marketing the babies everywhere, and maybe perhaps a government's
Then yeah.
initiative that way, and then somehow making it also the
Yeah.
mental
Economically
stimulation
worthwhile.
is
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
the
we
mental
should
yeah.
shame people, especially women who are childless. And I mean, I'm
Right.
doing
Yeah.
that
Thoroughly
on
agree.
X. Like that's what we should be focused on.
Mm.
And a lot of those childless women, by the way, they have a genetic predisposition towards being childless. And
Oh.
so eventually this question would too take care of itself, and because they'll be out of the gene pool, and the women who want to have more children, their genes would be reproduced more than those
Yeah.
crazy left-wing type ones. Yeah, so we need to shame people, and we have to like talk about openly. Oh, you want to shame people? You want to shame
Yeah.
people like for being trans? Oh no,
Yeah. Of
what
course
a
we do.
terrible person
Of
you
course
are.
we want to bully
Uh, e-
people.
yeah, excuse me. I was shamed since like 2015 for even
Right.
being white,
Yeah.
let alone having these views about politics that I now hold. Like, do you
Mm,
think people
mm,
like myself aren't being shamed every
mm.
single day? Like, what world do you live in? If I can handle it, maybe you too should handle it. And if you can't handle it, well, then do the opposite. Like, do the thing that I want you to do.
Mm,
So,
mm. In a way, having giant billboards of babies wearing duck costumes and bear outfits would be another shame to women,
yeah,
going around shopping for shoes
Yeah.
or whatever.
yeah,
That's
I
just,
think,
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, you're looking at it in terms of, I'm not sure how effective this would be because like Russia is doing this right now and their fertility rate is 1.4. I mean, they have baby advertisements. I've been to Russia like a half a year ago. I've seen some baby advertisements. I haven't seen any in
But
Canada.
put it on overdrive, like go max.
Yeah,
Baby.
yes. Well, I mean, it may create a backlash. The thing that works, the thing that actually works, I think, is shame. When you shame people, when you guilt trip people, then they're going to be a specific way. Like, why do you think all of those white people who are supposed to be like this enlightened liberals hate themselves so much? Well, because our society has like shamed white pro self identification, and it also like rewarded the opposite.
Yeah.
And so certain people like feel white guilt, a sense of white guilt for what their ancestors have done, or like whatever supposedly they are doing right now, which a lot of them believe America is like a systemically racist country against non-white people, like against every single non-white person, even though like we have this popular culture which rewards them, we have like affirmative
Yeah,
action, we have
DEI.
all of
Yeah.
the advertisements that are promoting that, but like they live in a very sort of alternative world. And so what keeps them in this position is shame, guilt, and like all of those things. And
Yeah.
so we could do the same thing, and it would be just as successful.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, anyways, I think we should probably start wrapping it up. We've been going for 2.5
Yeah,
hours.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
mm.
Our Twitter link timed out, but it's all
Yeah.
right.
Plug his stuff once more.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final thought? Any final words, Uber Soy, as we wrap up?
Um, Yeah, well, if you want to find me, I have Substack, YouTube, Twitter, and Telegram. I have four things. I also have Odyssey, but like I'm never there. I don't know what's going on there. But just just in case, I have another platform. I also have like if you want to support me financially, there is PayPal. Actually, the best way to support me financially is sorry, not Subscribe Star. Yeah, there's Subscribe Star. There's Substack. Yeah, Substack. Because when you support me financially on Substack, you also get perks such as looking at articles which are paywalled. So half of my articles are paywalled, the other half isn't. I have this schedule. I'm releasing one paywalled article and then one article which isn't paywalled, and that's basically my schedule. So if you support me for just $7 a month, you get access to my paywalled articles, which I think it's a good trade.
Cool.
But
So,
but yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
no worries. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to the viewers for tuning in as well. I hope
Mm.
everyone's enjoyed the
Thank
show,
you.
and I hope everyone has a great weekend.